Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers, a bicentennial celebration. I'm your host, John Hood. Our city is celebrating its 200th birthday, and each month of this over a year-long celebration has a theme to showcase everything that's made Murfreesboro so special. Over the next several months, our program will cover a variety of topics, from our work to our music to so much more. This month, the theme for the Bicentennial is about our arts and architecture. And our guests for this month are, first of all, Louis Snyder, former member of the MTSU faculty, leader in the arts community with the Tennessee Arts Commission, owner and operator, along with his son, of Studio S in Murfreesboro since 1972, I believe. Louis, welcome.
Thank you.
Jane Lee Wise, who is a former executive director of the Main Street Association here in our community, came here originally with her husband Gene when he was a minister for St. Paul's Episcopal Church.
That's right.
Jane Lee, welcome.
Thank you.
And James Manning, who is executive director of Oaklands Historic House Mansion here in Murfreesboro. James, we welcome you and appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Arts and architecture. Louis, I think about you as almost the father of arts in our community. Going back, he said he may be the grandfather. Going back to your coming to the MTSU faculty.
I came in 1962 to the art department. There were 5 members at that time, and they didn't have a 3-dimensional program at all, and that was my responsibility, which we did over a 10-year period to become one of the stronger programs in the state. But in the meantime, I felt the need to get off campus, and the students, when they left, they did not have the experience that they needed to go out into the world, into the field of art. And at that time, there was very few students coming into the art department that had any art education at all. So it was a challenge at that time to work with those people, and I started a program in my own studio, an intern program. In fact, it was the second in the Southeast of that type, to pick up where the college left off. And I referred to it as from the university to reality. And that kind of led to students coming in, graduate students and all from all over the country. But in the meantime, I'd started a statewide organization for the arts and crafts, and we were interested in building an arts council, a group of the faculty members, and we've been working on that ever since. Don't have it done yet, even with the appointment to the Arts Commission to do the research and all for the Joe L. Evans Center and to supervise the design of that. And leaving and coming back to my own studio, we still have that situation in Murfreesboro. We don't have an arts council. We have several art groups and all that we work with, and we've had shows. But Murfreesboro has just been one of the cities in the state that has not gotten organized from the art point of view.
And Studio S is the oldest arts gallery in the city, I guess.
We opened in 1972, and we've been open since. In fact, the gallery has been, it sits on a knoll, which might be of interest since we're talking about history here.
Good.
Sits on the knoll where General Bragg held his troops 2 days before the Battle of Murfreesboro. And after the battle, the troops came back behind the studio, and the studio, I might say, is an old dairy barn that we revised. That was on a 340-acre farm that had been won in a poker game in World War II. Just a tidbit of interest there.
That sounds familiar. You're talking about an old barn. I believe the art department in MTSU was in the old dairy barn.
That's right. I designed them both at the same time. And of course, the dairy barn on campus is gone now. But if you want to see something that's similar, come out and look at mine. It's a lot smaller, but it's it's been functioning, and as well as doing clay work, and we do a lot of teaching there. In fact, I've had classes there, I think all all that time except maybe 1 year since we opened, and a lot of students have gone through. But we've worked with the schools now, and fortunately we have art teachers in the public schools. That's helped a lot. We have a lot of professional artists in the community, different groups, and it's there's hope, but it's not where it should be for a city that's growing this. You know, we need more cultural, enriched communities. Absolutely. And I think the arts have been behind from that point of view.
But don't give up. Keep on pressing.
Well, I don't have any plans to.
Jane Lee Wise, you came to Murfreesboro as the second executive director of Main Street, I believe.
Yes, I did. Don Eaton was here at the beginning with the board that started Main Street in 1985.
What an effect Main Street has had on the downtown community. It's just been marvelous.
We've been very fortunate to have quite a number of people in the community who are passionate about the downtown. Not only business owners, property owners, and just general community people who have worked very hard to establish the program and then continue it. The first few years was getting started and getting people aware of what needed to be done. And then as we go along, we are the caretakers and to keep those kinds of things in the forefront of people's minds, because downtown has always been the center of the community, the heart, at least for a long time. We talk about the architecture of downtown. We are typical of all the towns across the United States in the commercial architecture that we have started in the early 1800s. Mm-hmm. And that architecture held all the way up through the Second World War. And after that, the automobile became king. Yes. And people wanted to be able to go further. They wanted shopping in one place where they had lots of parking, so they had buildings with lots of big open spaces around them and lots of parking. And so
shopping malls
and strip shopping centers. Fortunately, here we didn't lose our downtown, but we lost a lot of the architecture, and that's unfortunate. We are very fortunate to have some of the old pictures back from the early 1800s. This is one of my favorites, and this will show you the block on the west side of the square. That is where Henry's Florist is on the corner. Mm-hmm. And if you will look at those buildings and the beautiful Italianate architecture that we had, and we've lost all of that. The buildings are there, but the architecture is gone. Mainly because in the 50s, people thought you had to be modern and new to compete with the malls. And so the TVA came in with a lot of aluminum storefronts and took away a lot of the architecture and covered everything up. So Main Street's job has been to encourage people to take those buildings back to what they were, or as close to the original as you can. And that's been a big focus for a lot of years.
How difficult was it to get the owners to convert, if you will?
Very difficult.
Revert, all right?
Very difficult.
Took a lot of effort, didn't it?
It did. As I say, there were so many people in this community that were passionate about something happening downtown. They had tried, a lot of the business owners had tried several different ways of getting people to come back downtown to do business and to shop, and I think Main Street was about their last hope. Mm-hmm. But Main Street's a national program, and so it's been successful in communities all across the country, and it basically helps people understand why it's important to continue your downtown, to be active in a commercial success. So there were two things they worked on to begin with. One was the streetscape, where they redid all of the streets and the sidewalks, and they buried the wires underground, and they created that. And then the other part was working with the property owners and the businesses. And it takes an effort. It takes time to talk people into spending money on buildings, but we've been very fortunate. The one that I always think of that's so interesting is this is an old picture of the north side of the square.
Right.
Yeah, and this is another one. This shows you where the other end of it goes. Now that was the old commercial architecture, which was very, very prevalent.
Right.
When I moved here in 1991, this is the way that north side looked.
Right.
And because they had tried lots of different things to get people to come back downtown. Hey, notice me is what it tells you. And Main Street worked with a lot of the property owners, and this is what it looks like, more like what it looks like today. And you can see that it went very much back to the original, the ones that were changed. There were two that were never changed, and so we had that architecture.
It was still there.
It was still there.
Exact.
Some of it was covered up, but it was still there. So we were very fortunate that people saw that good commercial architecture had some value.
As a member of Leadership Middle Tennessee a few years ago, it came home to me in visiting other communities
Yes.
in Middle Tennessee, what a difference Main Street has made here. Louis?
What had happened there, in many cases, when the aluminum fronts were put on those buildings that had architectural terracotta on them, they
Just
knocked the relief
sheared it
off.
right off.
And that type of terracotta today is expensive to produce.
can
Now,
imagine.
in the 1980s, there was tax breaks for the restoration of that kind of work, which allowed a
helped.
lot of people that couldn't afford it normally to go back and have those buildings restored. I know we restored the Majestic Theater in Dallas, which the whole front had been, the relief work had been broken off around the doors and the facade. You could hardly tell what it was supposed to be like. And we went back and they turned it into a performing arts center.
That's happened a lot of places.
That's the building, you know, that Oswald.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
And the famous building, right.
Well, and the county was a good, city and county were great partners. Main Street is a public-private partnership. And so on the south side of the square, the original store was on the corner was Goldstein's. It was here for years and years, and there were 5 buildings that were all the same. This shows you the big open area on the first floor buildings.
County offices are now
The
in that
county
particular
office, the
location.
county came in and bought that whole facade. It had been, it wasn't tin, it was stone. That was pieces of stonework that would just covered the whole thing up. And they took all that off and they put it back as close as they could get to the original. And we were very fortunate that they came in and did that big project.
James Manning, let's talk about Oakland's Historic House Mansion. You're executive director. I remember growing up when that was almost destroyed with just vandalism and just deterioration, I guess.
It was, and urban renewal was a big part of that too. There were ball fields that were added and picnic pavilions and swimming pools right in front of the mansion, and there was no plan to save it. It was in the way and was actually scheduled for demolition in the 50s. And a group of concerned ladies formed. They met at the Women's Club and they realized the importance there, and they wanted to save it from demolition. And so the city gave the mansion to the newly formed Oaklands Association in 1959 so that they could begin the preservation of the mansion. And there wasn't much left of the grounds. It had been 1,500 acres, but it was built there originally for the spring, and the spring was still there, of course, and still flows today. And through years of getting the grounds back to looking as close as you could to the surroundings, people come up the driveway and visit and take a tour, and they feel like they're on a large piece of property again, which has been amazing, an amazing transformation.
I know at one time Baxter Hopgood, our city school superintendent, had an idea of forming an amphitheater down in there. As a matter of fact, with the observance of the Bicentennial of Murfreesboro, we had Black Fox, See Here Black Fox was presented down there, but that never did go beyond that, as a matter of fact.
Well, the ball fields that are there currently on the corner of Roberts and Highland as a part of Oaklands Park, a city park in front of Oaklands, are scheduled for demolition now.
Oh,
and
didn't
to go
realize that.
back there will be green space, and there will be some concrete poured sort of in a figure 8. And that idea is so that bleachers could be brought in and plays, and outdoor concerts could happen there again.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
And that's coming soon, we think.
Tell us about the architecture of the house itself and how that's been maintained and restored, I guess I should
Well,
say.
one of the most interesting things about Oaklands is one of the most confusing things about Oaklands. And so I brought a depiction of how the house evolved. And it began as sort of a vernacular 2-room hall and parlor house, meaning that it was 1 room deep and had a room on either side, and it had gables upstairs, or gable ends with fireplaces each end, and then dormers on the roof. And that's depicted here in this pink building. This dark edition was done by the Mannies in the 1820s in the Federal style. And this was the first major architectural improvement. They had a much finer home for entertaining.
This was the Manny family that owned this, right?
Dr. James Manny and his wife Sally Hardy Murfree, who was a daughter of Colonel Hardy Murfree, for whom Murfreesboro was named.
Right. So it really is a part of the history of Murfreesboro for sure.
It absolutely is. Through the 30s and the 40s, they added on to the house again with a second-story addition and a back wing. But then Sally died, and Dr. Manny gave the plantation to their son, Lewis, and his wife, Rachel Adeline Cannon Manny. She was the daughter of the first Whig governor of the state, Governor Newton Cannon. And when they moved here, they made the house Italianate. And that's this large addition depicted in green here. So everything that you see when you come up the driveway is the Italian addition added by the second generation, including the porch. There's been a lot of erroneous information printed that the porch came later, but it did not. It was a part of the original Italian addition by Lewis and Adeline, and really is what gives Oaklands its main appearance when you come up the driveway. That elaborate series of, I believe, 18 chamfered arches and columns is what's so recognizable today.
Where's your funding come from for Oaklands?
Well, we're in the city budget, and we're in the county budget again, which we're very grateful for, and we have a lot of private donations through membership, memorials, fundraisers. We were just talking about the candlelight tour of homes we had this year with 1,300 people that toured North Manny Avenue district. And North Manny Avenue was the first subdivision in Rutherford County. That was the driveway. When you were driving down Lytle and you see a shift in the road there at Manny Avenue, that's where the carriage path would have led to Oaklands. And in 1878, the Mannies divided that property, and those wing and gable houses that are the predominant architecture of Manny Avenue sprang up then. And they, through the sale of other pieces of property, were able to hang on to the house until 1884. Northfield Boulevard is about where the north field of the plantation was. Evergreen Cemetery was the slave burial ground for Oakland, so it covered that whole area for quite a distance.
Much more than I realized.
More than most would realize.
Quite a part of the history of our community. Lewis, what can we do to make the arts organizations more prevalent or stronger and active?
I think basically the support or the PR, the coverage, that kind of thing. Overall, we have so many new folks that have come in that it's not aware of the art community.
Very true.
And getting that word out and all has been one of the hardest things that we've come across. We have a lot of professional artists, and we have good quality art being produced. It's just that no one seems to know about it.
Well, your studio tour has helped that, hasn't it, some?
That's helped some.
Yeah, that's every
we don't
every
have,
fall.
In the fall,
right.
Lovely
and
studio
we're
tour.
working on, we're working on expanding that into all the arts.
Okay.
And that could help some, but we don't have the governmental support, the interest in the arts here. I think is one of the problems. It's been difficult to obtain that, as all of you, I'm sure.
By governmental support, you're talking about financial support?
Yeah, we have, there is an art committee in the city, but it's just pretty basic, and they do have shows in the rotunda, and that's more than it's been in the past. I think one of the things that I would like to see, and that would help visually, we need more visual arts out in the community. You need to feel that it's here, and we have very little show. Now, the new medical center did put up a rather large collection over there, but the hospital is so large that even there, it's you've got to look for it.
Oh yeah, right.
And you can go throughout the community and you won't see much evidence of it. And I think that's one of the things that would help. Now, there was some talk about putting a nice piece of sculpture over on the Greenway. That you know, we have to start somewhere.
Sure.
And if more's out there, I think then more folks become aware of it.
And the Center for the Arts is added to the arts community a bit, hasn't it?
It's added to the performing
arts, right.
Yeah, very little to the visual. And I think there again, you know, it's a lack of coordination among all the art groups, because there's a lot of them, right. And there's just no overall umbrella for them to work under. So that's why we feel that an arts council, and I'm not talking about a council with artists. That's the last thing you need. But of individuals that is interested in the arts that will help promote it and that kind of thing.
Have to get the artists themselves involved in out front.
There's a really strong nationwide recognized group in Chattanooga that's done just fabulous. Of course, Senator, my mind's going blank. Not Alexander, our other senator.
Senator Corker.
Corker.
Senator Corker, right.
He is a great supporter of the arts and helped that community grow.
Former mayor.
Right.
Now, I mentioned the Center for the Arts. I know it was the original post office, later Linebaugh Library, now Center for the Arts. And being involved in that conversion at the time, I did not realize it dated back to 1909, I believe, with the Italian architecture, isn't that correct? And the U.S. Postal Department had architects on staff that particularly and especially designed the buildings to be significant, which I think we've lost that in the current design of similar buildings.
I think as far as the architecture goes, we're kind of in the trend again that we're starting to look like all the other cities in the South.
That happens to a degree.
Yeah.
What's the future of Main Street, Jane Lee? It continues to be a very important part of the downtown community.
It does. As I say, there's a great deal of maintenance involved now as to keeping up what we have. And I know, but the other thing is again, you talked about the PR, the information getting out to the community. I know we did a study back when I was at Main Street, and we found, we had a telephone survey that my board members did, and everybody was shocked to find out when you talked randomly to people across the city that they considered that Old Fort Parkway was the center of town. And what it goes to show is when new people move here, they don't always find the downtown. And that's why Main Street does what it does as far as events, to bring people down to see what we have, the ways of finding ways of bringing people to the heart of the community, because that's what it has always been. And you mentioned the old post office. It's typical of many of our buildings that have been redone, and then you have different uses for it. So you have new uses for the buildings that are existing rather than tearing them down. And we are not a historic district downtown. The reason being that we lost too much of our original architecture and the buildings that were there.
To qualify.
To qualify. We don't qualify. We would have to do an overlay zone. But,
getting some living downtown. We've had an interesting addition recently with the
house.
Ed and Andrea Lowry facility in downtown.
Main Street worked with them quite a while to help them find a space and a building that they could do, because she's long had that dream of living right there.
I see.
And so we were thrilled. There are some apartments downtown in the upper stories, and those buildings were built. Original old buildings were built so that you had the retail on the first floor. The second floor was some storage, but also living space for the building owners or the business owners. So we're going back to that.
I remember the Tamburo family on East Main Street. They lived above and had their restaurant on the first floor.
That's right. So that's going back to what the use really was intended for to begin with. So we're always thrilled. We've got a couple of lovely apartments right on the square, and then a number of apartments on the roads leading into the square.
If our forefathers came back and tried to find mink slide, they would be surprised at the way it has changed.
They would.
Which is where the Lowry
That's
home
right.
is. James, tell us about anything else going on with Oaklands and what the future brings. Show us some contrast here in some of the photographs you've shown.
We were, in talking about the architecture of Rutherford County, my favorite book for someone to pick up, and we do have this available in our gift shop, which is handy for me to be able to say, is Hearthstones, The Story of Rutherford County Homes. And this was a publication by Oaklands, this edition, the last edition done in 1993, to raise funds for the restoration of the mansion. And I want the viewers to be able to see what it looked like then, and then take a look at the cover of our recently done cookbook.
Also available in your shop.
Also available in the gift shop, I might add, with the shutters that have been reconstructed, the copper roof added, and the columns repaired and painted, and how much better it is today, and how important it is to continue to get that revenue that you were speaking of through public and private funds. And we also have a gift shop that sells some very neat things. One of our local artisans, Gene Casto, has been so wonderful to make for us ink pens out of our history oak. Fortunately, we didn't lose the history oak, but in a recent storm, we lost a limb. And this tree is about 250 years old, and he's able, through a small limb that came down, to make quite a number of pens, and they have been selling very, very well by people that are interested in Oaklands and want to have a little piece of it for themselves.
You mentioned hearthstones. I think that originally came about through a series of articles in the Daily News Journal.
That's exactly right.
Mary Nell Morris was the society editor at that time, I believe, and I remember they put together just a bound volume. I have one of those in my possession, as well as the more recent book, and so many of those homes are gone, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. So that's a real treasure there.
Talking about the homes, Main Street first produced a walking tour with the help of the Preservation Center at MTSU, and now that we have the Heritage Center and the Main Street office together in one location downtown, they put out a new walking tour, and people can come by and they can take a walking tour from the Heritage Center, or they can, this is a self-guided one also, and it gives you a lot of the history and the architecture on East Main Street, plus some in the downtown. So this is free for the taking, and people can, I've seen a lot of people out on tours on their own.
I see them from time to time with their cameras and down East Main.
And we've done a lot of school tours, which is very helpful to help the children understand some of the history of the architecture in their own city.
You don't have any ghosts on that tour?
I don't think we do architecture. We didn't do the ghosts. Now, the Storytellers did do some ghost walks at Halloween, which is wonderful. I've heard a lot of those that I hadn't heard before.
There's some ghost stories. One that you can relate to having to do with any of the homes on East Main?
There's the home, I don't even know if it's here, but it's all the way down at the corner of University and Main Street. Dr. Egley lives there, and supposedly there is a ghost in that house. Now, I don't know if he's seen it, but there's an old story about a ghost in that home.
You could make up one on the Critchlow house. It's perfect.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the one I always heard about growing up.
The one with the mansard roofs and the big tall one out there. And well, and it looked, when I moved here, nobody was living in it, and it looked like it should have been. People are living there now.
House.
It's a lovely house. Isn't that's the one where they found the letters written by a woman who lived there during the Civil War, I believe. And they were, they had them taught. We had a lot of that going around at one point when I was with Main Street. They found the original letters.
Well, this has been wonderful. I just appreciate you folks coming and talking about arts and architecture and being some real storytellers for us today. Louis Snyder, we thank you so much for being here.
That's a pleasure.
Jane Lee Wise and James Manning, and helping us to be able to talk about and preserve some of the history of our city of Murfreesboro. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next month, we'll continue to look at the early days of Murfreesboro, as the bicentennial theme is about our rivers, roads, and rails. We hope you'll take a moment to participate in and enjoy the many activities scheduled for our bicentennial celebration. For more information, please call our Parks and Recreation Department at 890-5333 or visit www.murfreesborotn.gov. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next month for another episode of Murfreesboro Storytellers, a bicentennial celebration.